This self-paced module is intended for use in classroom sessions or as individual instruction. In order to use this module, audio speakers are required. Please make sure that speakers are attached to the computer and audible before proceeding. This module is intended to run in standalone mode. In other words, no action on the part of the student is necessary. All the student needs to do is start the module, take notes and pay attention. The module will advance by itself. Everyone completing this module will need to complete an exam with a passing score. The exam is located in the same folder with this module. The fatality prevention element requires us to perform a risk assessment in order to identify all tasks where there is a potential to fall from a height greater than 6 feet. The survey must record the type of task being performed, the location of the task, and the type of fall prevention or fall protection measures used to mitigate the risk. Fall prevention is the utilization of fixed structures, like platforms and handrails, that physically place a barrier between the person and the fall zone. Fall protection is the use of devices and equipment, like safety harnesses and lanyards, that prevent a person from contacting or hitting the lower level or another structure in the event that they fall. Fall prevention structures, like platforms, are preferred over fall protection equipment, like harnesses, because handrails and platforms actually prevent falls, instead of only limiting the potential for injury after a person has fallen. This survey helps us understand where our employees are exposed to working at heights and also what training and equipment they need to perform their work safely. The current Working at Heights survey or risk assessment has been posted in the common areas and on the intranet. If your task is not on this survey, then you need to perform a pre-job JHA form. This form helps you think of all of the possible risk associated with your task, and helps you to follow the correct risk prevention steps. See your supervisor for this form. As part of the fatality prevention element, we are required to give training over certain topics. This includes induction training at new hire orientation, on-the-job training, annual refresher training, and other toolbox talk type programs. We must ensure that employees know how to select, inspect, and maintain all fall protection equipment. Those employees that wear fall protection equipment, like harnesses and lanyards, must receive training on how to properly wear the equipment. We must train employees that erect, dismantle and inspect scaffolding, should we perform those types of tasks. All employees that operate powered elevated work platforms like man lifts and scissor lifts must also receive training on a regular basis. Holcim does not perform work on powered elevated work platforms like man lifts, but if we did, those employees would also have to be trained. All of this training helps to ensure employees are not exposed to risk while working at heights. Next, we will talk about the different elements of working at heights. First, we will talk about ladder safety. As simple as it may seem to use a ladder, many disabling injuries occur each year due to improper use of ladders. Knowing the do's and don'ts can help you avoid becoming another victim of falling from a ladder. The first type of ladder we will talk about are portable ladders. These ladders can be moved to areas when needed for a job. There are two types of portable ladders: step ladders and extension ladders. Step ladders, sometimes called A-frame ladders, need to be used fully spread and placed on stable ground. Extension ladders are used to reach higher objects, and must be used properly. All portable ladders must be inspected before use by the user and then formally inspected twice per year by a competent person. The formal biannual inspections are documented in the records kept in the safety department. To safely use a step ladder, you must make sure the ladder is fully open and that the spreaders are locked. You should never climb, stand or sit on the top two rungs. Also, do not balance with one foot on the ladder and one on another surface. This increases your chance of becoming unbalanced and getting seriously injured. Also remember to keep your center of gravity within the side rails. Leaning too far out on either side can cause you to fall. If something is out of reach, you should climb down and move the ladder over. Extension ladders must always be used properly. You must always tie off extension ladders to prevent the ladder from falling or sliding over. Extension ladders should always be positioned using the 4-to-1 rule. This means that for every 4 feet up, the base of the ladder should be set out 1 foot. The other kind of ladders that we deal with for fatality prevention element number 1 are fixed ladders. We have several hundred fixed ladders throughout the plant, all numbered using brass tags. Fixed ladders must also be formally inspected at least once per year by a competent person, and the inspections documented. If you are climbing a fixed ladder and notice that a rung, foot, gate, or any other part of the ladder is damaged, red tape the ladder, and report it immediately. Steps, rungs, gripping surfaces and platforms must be kept free of oil, grease or slippery materials. When ice or frost conditions are present, fixed ladders should not be used. Only one person at a time is permitted on a fixed ladder unless the ladder is specifically designed for more than one climber. Never jump or slide down from the ladder or climb more than one rung at a time. You should inspect all ladders before you use them. You need to look for damaged rungs and railings, loose bolts, or screws, damaged footings, broken slides on extension ladders, cracked, broken, split, dented, or badly worn rungs, cleats, or side rails, corrosion of metal ladders or metal parts, dirty and greasy spots, which can cause you to slip. If any of these conditions exist, place the ladder out of service. There are several things to remember when using ladders. To use a ladder safely, you should always face the ladder when ascending or descending. Never carry tools or materials with you. Use a rope and bucket to haul them up after you reach the landing. Ladders shall extend no less than 3 feet above the landing. When climbing a ladder, it is safest to utilize 3 points of contact because it minimizes the chances of slipping and falling from the ladder. At all times during ascent or descent, the climber must face the ladder and have 2 hands and 1 foot, or 2 feet and 1 hand in contact with the ladder cleats and/or side rails. In this way, the climber is not likely to become unstable in the event one limb slips during the climb. It is important to note that the climber must not carry any objects in either hand that can interfere with a firm grip on the ladder. Otherwise, 3 points of contact with the ladder cannot be adequately maintained and the chance of falling is increased in the event a hand or foot slip occurs. Factors contributing to falls from ladders include haste, sudden movement, lack of attention, the condition of the ladder, the user's age or physical condition, or both, and the user's footwear. Portable ladders should not be painted. This can create a potential to hide flaws or cracks in a ladder. Metal ladders shall not be used where they may contact electrical conductors. Fiberglass ladders should be the only portable ladders used at the Midlothian plant. Ladders should never be used in passageways, doorways, or driveways unless protected by barricades. You should also be sure to always set the feet of the ladder on a stable surface. Never jump from the bottom rungs of any ladder. You could twist an ankle or slip and fall, causing injury.
Worldwide Interweb Original.
Wait. it is very safe to operate. So, continue to call for
Now we will talk about another element of working at height safety, and that is fall protection. Wholesome policy says that fall protection is required whenever work is performed in an area 6 feet above its surroundings, or whenever work is performed within 6 feet of an unprotected edge. This means if you are going to be working at a height greater than 6 feet, you need to be 100% tied off. Or if you are going to be working within 6 feet of an unprotected edge, like during excavation or when a handrail is removed, you should be 100% tied off. Violation of this policy can result in a termination review under the Safety Recognition Rewards and Consequences policy. Fall protection systems include personal fall arrest systems, which include a full body harness, lanyard, lifeline connector and an anchorage point capable of supporting at least 5,000 pounds. The most important thing about a harness is that you wear it properly. Chest straps should be worn above the chest midline. Straps should be tightened to a point that you can fit your closed fist underneath the strap, but no looser. Leg straps should be closely fitted to the groin. They should be as tight as possible, with only enough room to run your hand between the strap and your leg. Loose leg straps cause serious injury during a fall, by lacerating the femoral artery. Harnesses that are worn too loose can cause a person to fall out of them during a fall event, thus rendering the equipment useless. Lanyards must have a minimum breaking strength of at least 5,000 pounds. They must have double action hooks. You should make sure the lanyard you choose is right for the job. Not all lanyards work the same. A retractable lanyard may be better suited for some jobs. You do not want a lanyard that is longer than the distance you could potentially fall. Remember that shock-absorbing type lanyards extend as a person falls, and may add additional distance to a fall. 100% tie-off means being tied off at all times during the job. On a dual-hook lanyard, at least one hook must be secured at all times, even when moving. Before identifying an anchorage point, the worker needs to calculate the potential fall distance. While the physics involved may get complicated, the math is actually very simple. For example, let's assume that the worker is using a 6-foot shock-absorbing lanyard attached to a full-body harness. According to the lanyard specifications, the maximum elongation of the shock absorber as the worker decelerates is 3.5 feet. If we assume that the worker is 6 feet tall, we simply add his height to the length of the lanyard and then add in the maximum elongation. That gives us a total of 15.5 feet, so you might assume that would be the potential fall distance. But things in the real world rarely follow theory perfectly. Suppose the harness isn't fitted properly. Maybe the leg straps are uncomfortable, so he loosens them a little. Perhaps the worker is really 6 foot 3 inches tall. Or he may have eyeballed the height of his work area as 25 feet, when it's really 21 feet. To account for unknowns like these, you should add in a safety factor of 3 feet. That brings the total safe fall clearance distance in this example to 18.5 feet. The worker must attach his fall protection device to an anchorage at least 18.5 feet above the floor on the equipment that is below the place where he will be working. If there's less clearance than that, the worker should use other safety equipment, such as a retractable lanyard or yo-yo. Generally speaking, it is important to tie off as high above the worker's head as possible. Not only does that reduce the chances of striking the ground or other objects below him, it also limits the potential fall distance and the forces his body will experience in a fall. A high tie-off may even keep him close enough to his work area to allow for self-rescue if he falls. Pay attention to the lateral distance from the tie-off. It's not unusual to see a worker using a retractable lanyard who has moved 15 or 20 feet away from the anchorage point. Should he fall, all of that extra cable will factor into the distance, and may even create a pendulum effect in which he swings back and forth. That's not necessarily a problem if he's in an open area, but if machinery or structural components are nearby, he could expose himself to serious harm. When choosing that tie-off location, consider what's below. If there is energized equipment, moving machinery such as exposed drive shafts, or other potentially hazardous objects, calculating the correct fall distance will ensure that the worker does not come into contact with them. Be sure that anchorage point for the tie-off is adequate. Normally, it should be able to support 5,000 pounds for each person that is attached. If you have any questions about your tie-off point, and if it is high enough or when you should use a retractable lanyard, see your supervisor or the safety department for help. An anchorage point is the device to which the lanyard is attached. You should trust your anchor point. An anchor point must be able to withstand a minimum of 5,000 pounds of force. Remember that a tie-off or anchor point must not only be able to hold you, but must be capable of holding you and an average pickup truck. Handrails, conduit, piping and scaffolding are never allowed as tie-off points. Use designated anchorage points, or beam clamps, beam straps, and design static tie-off lines only. If you are not certain about a load rating, safety, or integrity of an anchor point, don't use it. You should always anchor above you and should always protect the lanyard or tie-off adapter from damage, like from a sharp edge. You must also avoid swing fall conditions, or what you could hit or be swung into if you fall. All fall protection equipment must be inspected before each use. Before you use a harness or lanyard, you should examine them for defects. For body harnesses, you should thoroughly inspect all of the nylon webbing for frayed edges, broken fibers, burn marks, deterioration or other visible signs of damage. The stitching should be intact and not torn or loose. The harness should be somewhat soft and flexible and not stiff from dirt or contaminants. Check to see that buckles and D-rings are not distorted or damaged. Look closely at all components for stress cracks, deformity, gouging, corrosion and sharp edges. Inspect connection points where the buckle or D-ring is attached to the belt or body harness. Ensure that no stitching is pulled and that the buckle or D-ring is securely attached. Inspect all rivets and grommets to be certain they are not deformed and are securely fastened to the body harness and cannot be pulled loose. If you find any of these conditions during the inspection, do not use the equipment. For lanyards, you should completely check the entire length of the lanyard. Look for cuts, fraying, deterioration, knots, kinks, burns or visible signs of damage. Stitching should be intact and not torn or loose. Check to see that the lanyard is somewhat soft and not stiff from dirt or contaminants. Snap hooks and eyes should not be distorted or bent. Inspect them for cracks, sharp edges, gouges or corrosion. Check to be sure the locking mechanism is operating properly and that there is no binding of the mechanism. If using a self-retracting lanyard or yo-yo, you must inspect the body of the mechanism for flaws to assure that all nuts, screws and rivets are installed and tight. Also check crimped ends or stitching for damage. Inspect the entire length of the self-retracting lanyard for any visible signs of defects. Test the locking mechanism by pulling sharply on the cable end to be sure it locks immediately and firmly. If you find any damaged equipment, take it to the safety department for replacement. The safety department must keep record of all destroyed fall protection equipment. Also, any equipment used in a fall must be destroyed. Equipment is compromised after a fall and must be taken out of service. We also have a formal inspection program where all harnesses, lanyards, retractable lanyards, and beam straps are formally inspected and documented twice per year. The formal identifier, or serial number, is used to ensure all equipment is properly inspected. All fall protection equipment must be replaced after 5 years after they are put into service, per the manufacturer's recommendations. The safety department keeps record of when equipment was put into service, and will let you know when you need to replace your fall protection equipment. It is understood that harnesses and lanyards will get dirty. If your equipment needs to be cleaned, you must only use mild soap and water. Solvents and bleach should never be used for cleaning because they can deteriorate the material. Equipment should never be subject to forced drying, but should be allowed to air dry only. When you are done with your equipment and need to put it up, be sure to store your equipment in a cool, dry environment, away from sunlight. The UV rays in the sunlight can harm the material on the fall protection equipment. Never leave your fall protection equipment in the back of a truck or golf cart. Weather will make the equipment become dry and brittle. Now we will talk about guardrails and floor openings, another aspect of working from heights. Guardrails protect you from falls that can seriously injure or even kill. Most guardrails are built of strong materials and are usually solid when first put up. As time goes by, however, guardrails often are abused, weakened, broken, or moved and not replaced. Weakened guardrails are sometimes more dangerous than no guardrails at all because they give a false sense of security. Guardrails should have a top rail, mid-rail, and toe board secured to vertical posts or supports. A standard guardrail must be able to withstand 200 pounds of force with a minimum deflection in any direction. As you go about your job, get into the habit of checking guardrails. If you discover a weakened or missing rail or section, correct the situation if you can. Otherwise, report it so that the hazard can be eliminated. When repairing or replacing guardrails, remember you're exposed to the very danger that you are providing protection against. You must be 100% tied off with a harness and lanyard if you are working within 6 feet of an unprotected edge. Floor openings come in many different sizes and locations. The biggest danger of a floor opening is from falling through it and landing at a distance below. Another hazard is being struck by objects falling through the floor hole. Many deaths occur each year because floor hole covers are removed and not replaced, or they were constructed of materials that could not support the weight of the person or the load. You must be careful when removing floor grating on elevated platforms. Many accidents occur because workers forget where they are standing and fall through the hole they just created. This is why 100% tie-off is so important and required when working within 6 feet of an unguarded floor opening. Always remember to cover floor openings with substantial material, like heavy plywood, and secure it in place with clamps or other means. Be sure to mark the floor opening with a label or marking that reads "Danger, Floor Opening." Guardrails should be installed around any floor opening, even temporary openings, when possible. Now we will talk about powered elevated work platforms and their safety requirements. What is a powered elevated work platform? Sometimes called a man lift, scissor lift, aerial lift, cherry picker, or boom lift. These pieces of equipment make life easier for workers. If used correctly, the equipment provides quick and safe access to work areas that at one time could only be reached from scaffolding or a crane's man basket. These powered elevated work platforms are important tools, but as with any tool, there are right ways and wrong ways to use them safely. The most important tip to remember before operating any powered elevated work platform is to always read and follow the manufacturer's safety and operation manual. Only trained and authorized employees should operate the equipment. A qualified instructor must make sure that every operator reads and understands the equipment's safety and operating instructions. This includes all of the warning decals and labels mounted on the machine. When operating a powered elevated work platform, it is important to remember that 100% tie-off is required at all times. A sudden jolt has thrown people from man lifts before they could react. You should always check for overhead obstructions before driving or elevating the platform. Prior to each use, a safety inspection should be completed and documented by the operator. This should include a visual check and a function check. If a problem is found, red tag the equipment and tell your supervisor. You should elevate the platform only when it is on a firm, level surface. Although many lifts look like a rough terrain piece of equipment, they are not. Their large tires do allow the equipment to access somewhat difficult areas, but once in position, they are designed to only be out of level by 5 degrees while in operation. You should also remember to maintain safe distances from electrical power lines to avoid electrocution. Drop-offs, floor openings, and other obstacles should also be assessed before operating the equipment. Many accidents have occurred from employees being caught between the man basket and fixed objects, like a structural beam. Used correctly, powered elevated work platforms can be time-saving assets. Now we will talk about stairway and walkway safety. Most of us use stairways every day going up and down various levels either here at work or at home. We have done it for years and the problem is, we no longer think about the real danger in doing such. Falls on stairways is one of the most common incidents that occur both at work and at home. You should never run up or down stairways. Focus on the steps, not conversations or other distractions that may be present. Always look straight ahead when climbing. Only take one step at a time. Get help if you have to carry something up or down. If the steps are located outside, be extremely careful if it is raining or icy. Stairways shall be kept clear of materials to prevent an individual from tripping and falling. Walk, never run up or down stairways. Never jump from platforms or from 2 or 3 steps up. Walkways can be the cause of accidents resulting in injury. Keep all walkways clear of debris and potentially slippery substances such as ice, snow, water, oil, or grease. Keep passageways free of tools, equipment, and other materials. Always practice good housekeeping in these areas. Secure electrical cords and hoses so that they do not lie across walkways, run them underneath or along the sides of walkways. Spills should be cleaned up as soon as possible, but at a minimum, should be yellow barricaded, to alert people of the potential hazard. Now we are going to talk about scaffolding safety. Scaffolding has been one of the primary tools used to perform elevated work in the industrial setting for quite some time. Scaffolds are very useful because they allow you to gain access to work areas that are above floor level while providing a work platform. Scaffolds are to be provided for personnel engaged in work that cannot be performed safely from the ground or from solid construction. Scaffolding may only be erected and dismantled by competent persons who have received special certification training. Most of this plant's scaffolds are erected and dismantled by outside contractors. Scaffolding must be inspected several times throughout construction to ensure all safety factors are met. Once the initial construction is completed and the scaffolding is deemed safe to use, a competent person must inspect the scaffolding at least weekly while it is being used. Scaffolding also has to be inspected after bad weather, like strong winds or rain, and after any modifications are made. All of these inspections must be documented. Midlothian utilizes a tagging system which we will talk about next. If you get ready to use a scaffold in the plant, and notice that it has not been inspected in the last week, call one of the competent people listed on this slide to perform an inspection. The scaffolding tagging system we use at Midlothian is pictured here. The tag must be in the white holder and attached to the scaffolding. You should always check the tag before using the scaffolding, and if there is no tag present, you need to call one of the competent people over to inspect the scaffolding. We have 3 colors of scaffold tags that each represent different things. A red scaffold tag means the scaffold is unsafe and should not be used under any circumstances. A yellow scaffold tag means that 100% tie-off is required while using the scaffolding. This yellow tag is most often used when handrails or toe boards are not installed, thus creating additional hazards. A green tag means the scaffolding is safe to use without fall protection. The scaffolding has handrails, toe boards, and other safety equipment present. The competent inspectors check for several things during an inspection. They look at ground conditions, or the stability of the base of the scaffolding. They look at overhead conditions, to ensure no power lines or other hazards are present. They also check guardrails, handrails, toe boards, and access points for proper installation and functionability. They check structural components, like scaffold and planking for damage. These many things must be inspected to ensure employee safety. The video on the next slide demonstrates why it is critical to be tied off when erecting and dismantling scaffolding. This employee's fall protection has saved his life. There are a couple of more things we need to talk about to finish our Working at Heights training. Falling objects can be materials, tools, debris or equipment, and if they land on you, you can be seriously injured or even killed. Hard hats are the #1 defense against overhead hazards including falling objects. However, hard hats are not enough. Additional methods of protection must be used when there are employees working or walking below. In order to prevent injuries from falling objects, you should barricade the area below you to prevent fellow employees from walking or working below you. Always secure tools and equipment. Never throw items over the edge of the work area, and do not walk or work under a suspended load. A purchasing specification for each element of fall protection, like the harnesses and lanyards, exists for the Midlothian plant. This ensures all safety regulations are met with each type of equipment, and it also helps us standardize our equipment across the plant. No one other than the safety department should order any replacement fall protection, like harnesses, lanyards, yo-yos, beam straps. Let the safety department know if you need new equipment. FPE-1 has specific design requirements about the construction, installation, and maintenance of all anchorage points, elevated walkways, catwalks, fixed ladders and cages, guardrails, and platforms. Therefore, in order to ensure employee safety, only one of our certified welders may construct, install, and maintain any anchorage point, catwalk, ladder, or platform. If you need an anchorage point, catwalk, platform, etc. constructed or installed, please see a certified welder for assistance. Midlothian has a first responder team that has the skills and equipment to perform a rescue involving working at heights. Drills are performed to ensure proper rescue capabilities are available. A person suspended in a harness should be rescued as soon as possible after sustaining a fall. Therefore, no one should work alone at heights in an isolated area if using fall protection equipment. If you find any fall protection equipment, like a harness, lanyard, yo-yo, or beam strap that is damaged, please remove it from service immediately and see the safety department for a replacement. Any defects or damage found on fixed ladders or fixed platforms should be red taped and a work notification should be written to repair the damage. Powered elevated work platforms, like man lifts and scissor lifts, should be red tagged and taken out of service until they can be repaired or replaced. Under no circumstances should you operate a powered elevated work platform if it is not functioning properly. This concludes today's training over working at heights. Remember to follow all rules and procedures when working at heights and ask questions if you are unsure about something.